Welcome back to your show. We've seen a number of stories recently about medical marijuana dispensaries in Colorado and the efforts from some cities and state lawmakers to regulate it. You just heard from House Speaker Terrence Carroll. Matt Dietzler from Littleton wrote into your show saying, with the recent news around marijuana dispensaries, why not review the purpose of legalizing marijuana? Well, Matt, it is your show, so that's what we're going to do. Joining us are Adams County District Attorney Don Quick and Jessica Corry, whose law firm Hoban and Fiola, I hope I pronounced that correctly, has represented numerous medical marijuana clients. Thank you both so much for being with us.
Good morning, Adam. Thank you.
Jessica, let's start with you. Let's just jump right into his question about why not review the purpose of legalizing marijuana entirely?
Certainly that is something we should be discussing, especially in times of economic hardship across our state, across our country. Why is it that we continue to spend billions of dollars every year in this country to prohibit a substance far less harmful than alcohol? 850,000 Americans every year are introduced into our criminal justice system over marijuana. And as a mother and as a Republican, I believe in limited government, and that we need to let people make those decisions in their lives, and that it's not my role or even my obligation as a taxpayer to make sure that people don't put marijuana into their bodies. I choose not to use marijuana today. I'm one of the 93 million Americans who's admitted to using it in the past, but I don't believe government should be our babysitter, nor can government afford to be our babysitter during these tough economic times.
Don, you look at it, I know, from a different perspective. Why shouldn't, or should we review this concept first and foremost?
I think we should. We need to have the debate about it. But Adam, I think you need to look at the real numbers and what the cost to the society long term is. The research is solid that kids that smoke marijuana have lower graduation rates and poorer performance in school. Not a big surprise. Every high school teacher will tell you that. Every kid that leaves high school before graduating costs society directly $250,000 in increased social service costs. And entering into the justice system is much higher for kids that don't graduate high school, let alone kids that don't graduate high school and smoke marijuana. So you're being a penny sound and a pound foolish by thinking that you're going to actually save money by legalizing marijuana. It's actually going to cost you more money as these kids don't graduate high school, don't get good jobs, are underperformance in the workplace. Plus, you have to also understand that accidents, that 119,000 ER visits last year were attributable to use of medical marijuana. And so, and 15% of those are kids, so that's 18,000 kids that go into an ER based on, at some point, an accident that was related to marijuana. And that's not even talking about the driving offenses. So the more you legalize marijuana, the research, I'd encourage you to go to the American Association of Pediatricians, did a report in 2004. The more you legalize marijuana, the more it's going to get to kids and the more it's going to cost you in society, both for kids and adults, with increased marijuana use.
Justin?
I am not here to say that I want my kids, my two young daughters, to ever use marijuana. I hope they will show their bodies with respect. However, I am here to say this, that when we look at what marijuana prohibition, the actual policy has done, we find it actually drives kids toward marijuana. After 7 decades of federal marijuana prohibition, more high school seniors today admit to using marijuana than they do to alcohol. And federally funded science coming out of California universities demonstrates that alcohol has a far more detrimental effect on juvenile brain development than marijuana does. So is marijuana good? No. But does the policy we currently have in place effectively stop children from using it? The answer is clearly no. Let's use our limited resources, our limited tax dollars, to more effectively find solutions to stop our kids from abusing all substances, whether it's alcohol, marijuana, or prescription drugs. Prescription drugs is where we should be focusing. Far more kids die every year of prescription drug overdoses than they ever could have from marijuana, which has never, not once in this country, been conclusively or independently linked to a single juvenile death.
Don, let me bring viewers back into this as well and then set you up for a response to that. Tessa Hirsch, I think at this point they need to legalize it, slap an age limit on it, tax it like alcohol and cigarettes. Austin Potorf writing in, legalize marijuana, give all tax proceeds to the school. Christy McDonald, I'm very anti-drug, but at this point I give up. Is this a good environment in which to talk about this, because there is an economic need that Jessica did bring up? I mean, is this the right time to be having this conversation?
I think you should have the conversation, but I think you need to do with the actual facts. And so to say that marijuana is less harmful than alcohol is looking at apples and oranges. In some ways it is. Direct impact because of so much alcohol use, the answer is yes. But why are we going to then legalize marijuana and have marijuana increase, not only among adults, but among juveniles? It's going to happen. You look at the studies that the American Association of Pediatricians and the National Institutes of Health says, when you drop the deterrence impact, you increase parental use and you increase availability. When those three factors, that's what keeps kids from smoking marijuana. And you get rid of that deterrence, you increase parental use, and you make it more available in the community, and more kids are going to use it. So once again, it's being not a sound policy decision to say, okay, we're going to get some taxes this year, and then you're going to pay for that kid for the rest of his life if he gets involved in drug culture. I would agree with Jessica in the sense that we need to do a better job keeping alcohol, tobacco, and marijuana away from kids, but that isn't done by legalizing marijuana and making it available in the street corner dispensaries.
Let me take this bigger picture, because we have had a lot of stories regarding medical marijuana. I know it's an issue that both of you just heard what the speaker had to say. Cheryl Doyle writing in saying, it looks to me right now she sees a lot of advertising for these medical marijuana dispensaries. She said, I didn't know the demand for medical marijuana was so great. One would think we found a cure for everything in marijuana. Do we need regulation of the medical side of things, Jessica?
Well, representing medical marijuana patients and caregivers, I can tell you this, that the picture out there that people have of medical marijuana patients or medical marijuana users is far from reality. We have people who are seeking out medical marijuana only as a last resort after conventional narcotic therapies have failed them. So we should really encourage or allow people who are sick and dying in our state to be able to use this alternative treatment. There are abuses, and there is an opportunity and perhaps even an obligation to implement a regulatory system that protects patients, consumers, taxpayers, and caregivers themselves. And if you look at this industry, the medical marijuana community, you will find without exception that this industry will embrace regulation in a way we will never see probably within our lifetimes again. In California, it was medical marijuana dispensary owners that led the charge to successfully impose a 4% tax on dispensaries in Oakland. So this is an industry that is eager to be seen as legitimate. They are, with very few exceptions, honest, good businessmen who want to succeed and make good money.
Regulation needed, Don, on these?
I don't think we need dispensaries at all, and it's not what the people voted for in 2000. Go back and look at the constitutional amendment. They voted for a patient to be hooked up with a caregiver after a physician had made that reference. A patient or caregiver. It defines that as a one-on-one relationship, and you get 6 plants either for the patient or the patient in relationship to the caregiver. You have that said 87 times on patient, 28 times for physician, 22 times for caregiver. You know how many times the amendment talks about dispensaries or grow? The answer is 0.
With all due respect to the district attorney, hooked up is not the term that's used in the constitutional amendment.
Hang on one just sec, Jessica. Just finish your point there, sir.
Okay. And so there isn't a provision for dispensaries. And so I don't think that the legislature can override what the citizens voted on in 2000. In fact, the legislature back in 2001, when they were enacting the statute in place to move the amendment into law, said that this is the lawful limit of medical marijuana that the amendment is. So it never mentions dispensaries, it doesn't mention grows, and if you're going to have dispensaries, you have to have grows. And they're not hooked up with one patient and one caregiver. It defines a caregiver as a person, not a corporation, whether they're in a state or an out-of-state corporation. And so what is happening now with the dispensaries isn't what the people voted for. If they want to go back and ask the people again in the fall, do you want a dispensary system? I think that's a question to ask. But this wasn't authorized under the amendment.
I'm going to come back to that in a sec, but I have about a minute and a half left, so I want you to
With all due respect, it's true. Dispensary is not mentioned. Distribute, dispense, deliver, transport, all of these terms that assume that there is a vehicle to take marijuana from a caregiver and give it to a patient, they're all used. And so obviously any court in Colorado, as we've seen over the last several years through litigation, is going to see that we need a system of distribution. We need dispensaries.
But we had it for 7 years without dispensaries, and before the abuses, that worked. The caregivers, on average, only had 3 patients, so there was nothing wrong with the caregiver system. What happened was, due to law and legal changes in position of the Department of Health, they backed off the number of patients. So you had a caregiver system that worked, and then the dispensaries moved in, and we had now, what, 22,000 applicants in the last 10 months compared to 2,000 applicants the first 7 years?
I've got half a minute left. You want to respond?
We've got 30,000 people on the Colorado medical marijuana caregiver system today. That's a lot. That's almost 1 in every 100 Coloradans. So we really would just encourage people to see this issue for what it is. It's alternative health treatment in times of economic hardship.
Jessica, Corry, Don Quick, thanks so much. We'll end up having this conversation. I imagine if
Look
it does
forward
go
to it.
if it goes to voters this fall, next fall, we'll have this conversation again.
Thank you, Adam.
Appreciate your time.